The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. With your host, Dave Hondel.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Stage Door Show tonight. This is Dave Hondel. Tonight, our guest is an award-winning actress and producer who you've seen in the popular 90s movie Point Break, the 2016 movie The Lennon Report, and she had multiple nominations at several film festivals in the acclaimed short film, The Cassie Confession. She also has a new highly rated thriller out now entitled Airbnb, in which she produced and co-starred in, and we're honored to have her on the show with us tonight, Miss Gloria Mann. So thanks for being with us, Gloria.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I know we set this meeting up a while ago, so I've been excited to have you on the show. So we're finally here.
Finally here. The strike prevented us for a bit.
And that's so glad that that's over with. I mean, this is a highly rated thriller. I mean, it's got 8 stars on IMDb, which is not easy to get.
No.
But talk about your new thriller, because you actually were nominated for Best Supporting Actress in this at the Orlando Film Festival. And so again, for our listeners out there, talk a little bit about Airbnb, because I saw that the trailer was amazing. And
Thank you.
I know, again, it's been, highly rated. So talk about your role in that and how that whole production came to be.
Well, my role in it is Jennifer Davies, and I'm the overprotective fitness enthusiast sister of the protagonist, Ryan Davies, who's married to a younger woman, and I'm very disapproving of her. I don't trust her. My brother, Ryan, has a lot of money, so I immediately think that she's married him for those reasons.
Yeah, for the money.
Yes, and he's just recently gotten out of the hospital because he had an ulcer. So I'm at the beginning of the film, you see me giving him all of these supplements to tell him to take care of himself, and then they go off on this weekend at an Airbnb to celebrate their anniversary, and I keep trying to get a hold of him because I'm overprotective and I want to hear from him. And he, of course, is with his wife and they're on their vacation, and he doesn't get back to me in timely fashions. There's a conversation, and then something happens where I can't get in touch with him, and so I become suspicious. And good thing I do become suspicious, because then I have to kind of step in. But I had to train pretty heavily for this role. There's a great deal of physical fighting. We had an incredible fight choreographer, Scott Blackwood, who's from Los Angeles, who works on a lot of shows, lots of film. And he came out and was on set with us to choreograph these fight scenes. I personally trained with a private trainer, and for 2 months, every single day, 5 hours a day, to do this, because it was very challenging physically. So, and I wanted to, I needed to look like I knew what I was doing. And so there were pretty some intense fight scenes.
Well, it's just, I mean, for everybody listening, that's what goes into filmmaking. It's not always glamorous like people think. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and a lot of physical work a lot of times, especially in a thriller like this. But what I want to get into is, I think that what I like about this project is that, there's a lot of people that stay in Airbnbs. Obviously it's a very popular thing to do, but I've always had this kind of suspicious mind about, and I don't really I don't want to stay in an Airbnb myself, because I always think people are hiding cameras in there, or it's just a paranoia thing that I have with Airbnbs,
and rightly so after seeing this movie.
so right, and so I think that kind of plays into people's fears naturally, which I think is really it just goes into making a good thriller, because you're actually playing on people's fears, natural fears that they might have already. Correct?
Yes, and I think good thrillers do that. Hitchcock did it. The film Get Out did it. I mean, I feel like the really good psychological thrillers push those buttons, and that's why we're so intrigued by them. That's what keeps us going back to them,
Right.
because we want that. And uh, and I think they're the really smart ones sort of drop the proverbial breadcrumbs along the way.
Right.
And we
Yeah.
get to, and then exciting. It's exciting to follow those, to see where the story takes us. And this story in particular is, I think, unique in that it really is a woman's driven story.
Right.
The women really get to have their say in this, which is
Yeah.
another reason why I loved helping to develop it and getting to produce it and act in it as well.
Talking about, independent, filmmaking, and I think, the good part about being independent is that you're not having to answer to a big studio, right? And being able to really craft this, film the way you want it to be. And, again, I cannot be happier to see some films out there that are actually women driven and make the strong people in the movie are the women. And as I'm a huge advocate for that, I was raised by my mom. She was a very strong woman, and didn't have the best of men in her life. And
Right.
so I was always a big fan of my mom, and she's always been my superhero, and she is now. So I love to see films like that where the women are the strong people. And so talk about that. Do you think that Hollywood is where it needs to be? I always ask this question because I don't think we are, and I think we're there's some strides being made. But what are your thoughts, being in the film industry for so long as a woman? What do you think?
Well, I think back to Point Break and what that film was about, and Catherine, directed by Catherine Bigelow, a
Right.
woman, a very sort of male testosterone driven film. But the guys that were in that were just amazing. I mean, I got to work with some pretty
Yeah.
amazing people. And I feel that it is changing. And I think that because more women are getting involved in the producing end of it, people like what Greta Gerwig did with,
Yep. Barbie.
Barbie, and
Yep.
there's a lot more actors going, doing what I'm doing, because we kind of got tired of the roles that were coming our way,
Right.
and we wanted to have a say in the stories that were being told, because they didn't represent us. They were, a lot of times they were through the lens of a male opinion or
Right.
perspective.
Very
And
antiquated opinions. Correct. Yep.
exactly. And so to have a say in the development, the storytelling, I'll never stop being an actor. I'm a classically trained actor. So I have a master's degree from University of California, San Diego. And one of my greatest jobs was getting to work with Sir Peter Hall from the Royal Shakespeare Company at the Ahmanson in Los Angeles. We did A Measure for Measure and A Midsummer Night's Dream in Rep. And that, in a place like Los Angeles, where it's movie driven industry, television, that to me was just, one of the most delicious experiences I've ever had. And so I just think that we want more quality. So, as a producer, learning to choose those projects and really develop them from their inception, and getting to actually have a say in the storyline of the character that I play. It's a very empowering uh, feeling, and it makes for the experience to be much more empowering than just being hired as an actor. I mean, yes, I'm still hired as an actor, but I always have a lot of input, and I think a lot of directors um, like that because they like collaboration. And I think anybody that's worth their really that's really good at what they do, they want collaborators.
Yeah.
So I think that that it is changing in that regard.
Well, what do you tell the young girl that's listening right now to you um, you know, that wants to get into the industry. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of things that, you know, the Me Too movement, a lot of things that have happened in the past, you know, several years. But what kind of advice can you give a young girl just trying to get into this? And you know, what do you tell her when she's faced with a difficult situation, I guess, you know, in the industry?
Well, I would always say first and foremost, train. If you want to be an actor, go to drama school and learn to be an actor, because once you learn that, it's never taken away from you. And you always will have that technique, always. And if you want to be a producer, if you want to do film, go to the schools that will afford you opportunities to work with great people, because those connections that you make in school will be for a lifetime, usually, if you go to a good school. Um, what I would say to a woman who is faced with any kind of challenge where they feel unsafe, I would say absolutely you need to make sure that people know about it. Don't feel like you have to be quiet at all about it. Um, don't worry or be scared that you're not going to get hired again if you don't comply. You know, there is a lot of fear around that, especially with the situation that just happened, you know, with Harvey Weinstein. Women were afraid that they would never work again, and he used that
Yeah.
tool. So just look to yourself always, stay true to yourself. Don't do anything that does not feel right. Don't let anyone touch you in a way that does not feel that you don't want, and keep yourself as safe as possible. Make sure, if you don't want to be in the same room with someone alone, invite someone to come in with you. And I'm talking anywhere from you know, when someone is casting, or if someone is giving you a costume fitting, and you don't, you know, it's important that we keep ourselves safe, and we realize and know that we have the power to uh, say, I don't feel comfortable with this. I'm
Yeah.
going to leave this situation. And that's, we have that.
I think the oversight is getting a little better in Hollywood, but it still needs to get, you know, keep continuing to get better. But I think people need to look out for each other. I think, you know,
Absolutely.
whether they're a man or a woman or anything, it's I think it's really important to have that oversight and make sure you protect each other. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes,
The
absolutely.
the other thing I want to talk about is you moved from Los Angeles. This is interesting to me,
Mhm.
to New York, and I know. I mean, obviously, Los Angeles. There's a lot of movies and TV shows, and I know that there's a lot of TV in New York as well. But is theater something? I know theater is you're classically trained, and do you feel like that the theater community in New York, are you more comfortable in in that community being in New York rather than LA?
You know, I found a wonderful theater community in Los Angeles through the
Mhm.
Mark Taper Forum and the Amundsen, the music center there. And, you know, but, you know, we also all worked in television and film. The theater community in New York, I absolutely love, because we all sort of came from that.
Right.
Not everybody in Los Angeles comes from the theater.
Sure.
So, and that's where I come from. That's where I started. That's my first love. And I love the actors that are trained in the theater. I love working with those actors.
Yeah, it's
They,
amazing. I live near New York and I just absolutely love I was in New York City for 10 years and I lived at the
mm.
theater, you know. Every chance I got, I went to a show and went, you know, try to do the lotteries and everything
Oh,
else. And
right.
I absolutely loved going to Broadway. The other thing we talked about before we started recording is that, you know, from the Orlando area, Winter Park, and there's a
Yes.
lot of great theater there. Orlando Shakes, you know, the Orlando Shakespeare Theater,
Yes.
the Orlando Repertory Theater. And did you find, you know, being there that you were a big part of that community? Did you do a lot of shows there?
No, I did not,
Okay.
because I got married at a really young age. And then, as soon as my daughter, she was born in Winter Park Hospital. And as soon as she was born, we decided to go west.
Yeah.
And we moved to San Diego, and then I went to the University of California, San Diego as an undergraduate, and then I went into their graduate acting program.
Sure.
So I kind of followed that trajectory.
Yeah.
So
And the thing is with Los Angeles as well, when you were there, did you find, I've always like to ask actors this because I get different answers, but it's a very saturated market. Sometimes you go to auditions, you see the same people over and over and over again for the same roles. But one thing I like to talk to my listeners about who are indie artists and so forth, that you're going to hear no a lot because you're going to these same auditions with the same people, but it might not just be what the director wants. It's not that you're not talented. It's not that you're not worthy of that role. It's just maybe that there's a certain look or maybe a certain whatever it is, they're looking for. So I always like to point that out because one thing I hate to have my listeners, if they're so close to getting a role or to not quit, just to continue to, because whether you're in LA or New York, you're going to be in a saturated market, but you almost have to be in one of those in order to really have a career in it. Does that make, am I making sense on that?
that you're absolutely right, Dave. And you can't quit. If this is what you want to do, if all of the signs, as you've developed yourself as an indie artist, no matter what it is, if it's music, if acting, whatever it is, we know who we are if we stop for a moment and listen to that inner voice. And I don't believe in quitting at all. And you're absolutely right. It is a saturated market. But somebody's got to get the gig. Somebody's got to get the role. Why can't it be you?
That's right.
And it will be. It will be one day. And it's exactly like you said. Sometimes you just you have the wrong hair color.
Yeah.
There's a very funny scene in Tootsie, which I really love, where Dustin Hoffman is at an audition and he's saying, we're looking for someone shorter. And he goes, oh, I can be shorter. I'm wearing lifts. And then he goes, well, we're actually looking for someone taller, but I can be taller. I can be, I mean, we're looking for somebody different. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that scene is so true. They just sometimes are looking for somebody different.
Yeah. Have you ever had any like a crazy audition story, something where you auditioned, and I think everybody eventually has a crazy audition story. So do you have any?
I auditioned for this show that was being done by the people that did Married with Children. It was a new show on Fox years ago, and it was called Women in Prison. And I went in for this role, one of the, I think it was to be CCH Pounder's girlfriend in prison. And I did this thing with I was chewing gum, and during the line, I just pulled the gum slowly out of my mouth and flipped it around my finger really fast and twirled, and then stuck it in my mouth, like in a momentum that
Right.
was like I had trained. It was like a trick.
Sure.
Like I just did. And they called me back 4 times. And the 5th time I didn't do it. And they screamed out, "Where's the gum trick?" And I said, "Oh man, is that why you keep calling me back?" But I got the job.
The gum trick.
They wanted the gum trick, but I got the job.
Yeah.
And I did the gum trick on the show. So
that's great.
so that was actually very funny. And the producers, those guys were so funny and so talented. Really smart guys that did those shows.
Yeah.
They were just laughing. And so the fact that I could make network laugh and the producers laugh for this gum trick that I just actually made up on. I just said, "I'm gonna pop some gum in my mouth." I think
that's what you put in special skills on your resume. Right?
Yes. But you never know what's going to get you the job.
You never know. That's good advice. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is you've been in several things. You've done TV, stage, and film. What is do you gravitate towards one or the other? Do you are they just all special in their own way?
I gravitate towards really good work, good roles, great directors, um, great plays, great. If I love the script, if it's really well written, that will draw me in. Of course, who am I acting opposite? I did. I was able to do the Lennon Report that you mentioned at the earlier, and I was so thrilled that when I got cast in that, I got to play opposite Richard Kind,
Yeah,
and
he's
that was
awesome, man.
just a dream to work
Right.
opposite him. He's a
Yeah.
dream. So things like that. That's how I choose
Yeah.
roles generally, and I've actually just been so blessed and so um, grateful that I've gotten to work with just amazing. Working with opposite Keanu
Right.
Reeves
Correct.
on
Yeah.
Point Break is, it wound up being a small scene, but it's an iconic chase scene. I mean, we
Exactly.
shot it.
Yeah.
That was much longer. But
Right.
and that's another thing. In film and television, you never know what's going to wind up. You do all this work, um, but you never know what's going to wind up on the screen because
Exactly. Yeah. It's
they
all the
have.
editing. You never know.
Sure,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
I think, being a producer, you obviously, you see a lot more behind the scenes, than an actor would if they're not used to producing or directing. And do you feel that and being a producer, it gives you more of a broad, kind of overview of the filmmaking itself, and that being an indie filmmaker, when as coming from a producer, makes you maybe a better actor. Is that
I
kind of true?
absolutely, I absolutely, I absolutely feel that way. And here's an example: Airbnb. The first pass on it, the first take on it after it was edited, I had a much longer scene at the opening of the film. And I had to talk to our editor, who's also the writer and director, Robert Mann, and I had to say, we had to talk, we got to cut that scene. It's too long. It's dragging the opening of the film.
Yeah.
And it was my scene.
You were cutting your own scene,
Oh
basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
I said, get rid of it.
Right.
Let's just, and he was brilliant at what he decided to do with it. But I was absolutely on board. I don't want anything,
Right.
especially when you're producing, you've got to look at the whole that's, the whole, at the whole,
It's a
I
greater
almost said
good. You have to think of the greater
product.
good.
I
Yeah.
said product. It is a product. It becomes a
Right.
product. And you have to think about the money, and you have to think about marketability, and as a producer, you have to think about, how am I going to get my investors back their money? And if it happened to be in the scene that you have to split yourself and say, okay, now I'm a producer, that's my work up there, but we don't need that. That
Yeah.
has to go for the
Yeah.
betterment, like you said, of the whole.
Right. And and the other thing is, when you're an indie filmmaker, I mean, obviously your budget isn't even close to what a studio budget might be, even though you have investors. You got to take care of those investors, like you said. And it's you got to have more of a business sense, business mind when you're an indie anything. Whether you're a singer, an actor. I mean, if you're an independent artist of any kind, you have to be a business person as well. You just have to be. Um, you're not gonna be paying somebody to manage you necessarily, or to, you might even be your own agent. But that's why you have to have a business sense, I think, and it's going to sustain your career a lot longer if you think of everything like, I mean, if you think like a Taylor Swift, somebody who started out, in country music, but she didn't have a big circle around her when she first started, and but she thought of, like, as a business person, and that's what I think helped her sustain her career and actually blow it up, um, as she went along, because of her business sense. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree with you. I think now, as artists, I mean, I've always been an indie artist. I've always considered myself, I've kind of forged my own path. I know what I want. I know where I want things to go. And I don't rely on someone else to get me there. I try to do it myself, no matter what. And I think we need to, as indie artists, we're all indie artists. I think as an artist, that implies you're an independent. We're
Well, more so
free.
now. I mean, even I mean,
Absolutely,
what the
more
what the,
so
what the
now.
strike showed us is, it's like everybody's an indie artist. I mean,
If
if
the
you're not
strike,
working, you're
it,
unemployed, right?
exactly, if the strike showed us anything, You're absolutely right. That's what it showed us, is that we are all indie artists and we cannot rely on anyone but ourselves. So it's important to build a strong business, sense. And you can't just ask people, somebody will give you some money to do something once, but if you don't give them back their money, they're not going to give it to you again.
Right.
And I don't like to operate that way.
Right.
So I want to provide quality for them and give people back their money. I mean, it's important to me. It's important for our Vanity Films company too, which my brother Robert Mann founded years ago. It's very important to him.
Yeah,
I mean, I've had to sell a car before to pay, as a producer, to pay something off. I mean, that's what you have to, sometimes you have to just, but the bottom line is you're the responsible one. So, as I said, I think we're all indie artists, and that should give us all a little more freedom to know that our destiny is in our own hands and not in an agent's hand, not in a casting director's hands. Study, take classes when you're not working, read scripts, read plays, watch great acting if you're an actor, listen to great music, know who the new artists are. Taylor Swift is a great example. We have to be entrepreneurs. We are our own CEOs.
Yeah. And I mean, there's no excuse now, right? With all the streaming platforms that we have out. I mean,
no, my God,
a lot of actors that have been doing very, very well on Lifetime, Hallmark, and just all these great streaming platforms that we didn't have when we were growing up. We had 3 or 4 networks that you had to, if you were going to be seen at all, you had to get on one of those networks or on the big screen. And now you have the opportunity to get onto hundreds of platforms on streaming networks. There's no excuse to quit. You should not quit. Keep going. You're going to eventually work your way up on all these streaming platforms, and who knows? I mean, some of these platforms have some really good material that they're like, they have like cult followings, on some of these movies on like the Stars Network or whatever network, you're on Roku TV or Freevee. There's so many different options right now. So I mean, what are your thoughts on the evolution of that? I mean, do you think that, I mean, it's got to be good for the market, right? Especially for indie artists.
I think it's fantastic, and I think it's empowering. Anything that gives artists more freedom, I am all for, because that to me is the bottom line. We must maintain our freedom as artists. Otherwise, you're not an artist. You're a self-imposed in prison of some sort. We have to be free. And that phone, as long as you're not using it to waste time and scroll and see how many, scroll through Instagram. I mean, you can use Instagram to post a monologue, post a sonnet, post a new song that you wrote. I always watch when people do that. I find I love that. Yeah. And you can get followings that way. You've got the camera on your phone. These cameras, you can make a movie now.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying no excuse for
no excuse
project.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. So there's more freedom now than ever. And yes, there's a lot of, and I don't like this word because it can sound demeaning when as we did, when you're going into distribution. Content, you hear this word now all the time, content on these platforms, and they want more content. Well, as you said, it becomes an even more saturated market now because they need all this extra content. But the bottom line is, if you have a phone now that can actually make good content that could compete with all of the other content. I mean, we got distribution after our premiere in Los Angeles, and we're on Amazon. Our film is on Amazon Prime. We're on all the platforms. Our film dropped October 3rd, which was right in the middle of the strike. So it was kind of like we couldn't speak about it. We couldn't advertise it. So that was a bit frustrating. We shot it during COVID.
Wow.
And then we dropped it which upped our budget considerably. That's a whole nother thing, but we went
Yeah.
over budget, but we had to keep everyone in a bubble.
Man,
And
you talk about challenges you had to overcome.
oh, it was we had a few challenges on this one,
Yeah.
but we came through them.
Right.
Not at any time we had to shoot in the fall, because we wanted this beautiful beautiful fall colors, and they were especially beautiful that year. But COVID happened. We had already postponed it 1 year. We couldn't do it again, or we would have lost all our funding. So we went ahead with it. We kept everyone housed for 30 days. We couldn't release anyone, so everyone was literally in a bubble.
Right.
We fed them the most delicious food, and gave them vitamins and hot soups, and kept them really healthy, and no one got sick, and
Wow.
we got through it.
That's great.
So where there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that, because it gives our listeners more inspiration that, look, you're going to face challenges no matter what, especially with, being an indie filmmaker. There's going to be many challenges, but you have to stay the course. This is your passion. This is what you want to do. This is what you've dreamed of doing, and just don't give up your dream, because you can do it. And, there's a lot of people out there that are maybe so close to realizing their dream, but they give up, and nobody should do that. Nobody should give up. This is what you're meant to do, and always think that. So,
That's exactly right, Dave.
Course.
Yeah, stay the course, and sometimes you find that you just can't even do it another day, and do it that day. Do it that day where you say, I just can't do it one more, and that will be the day that you hit, that something happens. And I know it sounds crazy, but it works in cycles.
It does.
And you have to be incredibly disciplined, and just keep doing, like you said, you have a practice that you do every day that's good for you. Do a lot of self-care. I do yoga every day. And then you're able to also build such resiliency inside of yourself that you can face a lot more challenges than the average person. And as an artist, you have to remember that you're not an average person. You're an artist.
An artist.
And it is close to
you have to
it
create
is
art. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's close to being a superhero. It is close to it.
And also people listening that aren't, quote unquote artists, everybody has creativity within them. And, whether it's, singing, acting, or writing a book, or, even baking, and cooking. And, there's a lot of things out there that are creative that you might not think are creative, but it really is. Not everybody can cook. Not everybody can bake a great cake or cookies or whatever, so always, no matter what you do, you can always be creative. And I think we all have it within us. We just don't always realize it. And when you do realize it, there's nothing better. It's a spiritual thing, I believe. And, so just keep at whatever you're doing, and whether it's raising your children, and, there's a lot of things you can be creative, and show who you are inside. So just, keep at it. Don't ever quit. Gloria, there's one more question I'd like to ask. And, that's, as far as collaboration, is there one person out there that you've always wanted to share the screen with, and who would that be?
Oh, wow. There are so many. Oh my gosh. Off the top of my head. Well, I love Margot Robbie.
Yes.
I think she's amazing. I love Benedict Cumberbatch. Oh God, Mark Rylance. He might be up there.
Yeah.
Emma Thompson.
Oh, awesome.
Love her. Love her.
Yeah.
I love Anthony Hopkins.
Oh,
and Michael B. Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
John David Washington.
Yep.
Viola Davis. Octavia Spencer. There's just a few.
Yes. That's quite a list. That's great company.
Denzel. Forget. Oh my gosh.
He's my all-time favorite actor. If anybody, to this day, since I was young, anybody says, who's your favorite actor? Denzel's my first, like right out of my mouth, Denzel Washington. He just goes, his character, he almost becomes that character. It's almost like he's not it's so effortless. And I would love, if I was an actor, I would love to share the screen with him as well. So that's a great answer.
He's
all the other ones too.
He's at the top there. Yeah.
Gloria, before we go, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to leave behind when people think of Gloria Mann when it's all said and done?
Well, I hope they think that that if they've ever run across me, that I've been kind to them and helpful in any way. I try to do that as much as possible. And that I've done good work in the world, that I've tried to do the best I can in the world with integrity and honesty, and hopefully they see that I've tried to be fearless.
Yeah. Well, you're a great role model, and that was a great legacy, and I know my listeners appreciate those words, and it was such an honor to have you on the show, Gloria, and just the work that you've done, the work you continue to do. Airbnb is on streaming platforms. What now? You talked about Amazon Prime. Is there other streaming platforms that movie can be seen?
Yes, it's on Vudu. It's on Apple TV, iTunes, Google. It's also on VOD, video on demand. So if you have any of the like Spectrum or DirecTV or any of those, you can find it there as well.
It's everywhere. Okay,
yes. And Dave, thank you so much for having me on your show. What an honor. And thank you for all you do for indie artists. Your show is invaluable, because I mean, as an indie artist, I have to be reminded, and I think we all need to be reminded that we're not alone. There's support.
I appreciate that. It's all about inspiring the up and comers, and the people that are coming behind us, and again, you're a true inspiration, and again, thank you, Gloria. You're always welcome on this show anytime.
Thank you, Dave.
Anytime you're pushing anything, or even if you're not.
Thank you so much.
Just want to chat. Come on the show.
Great, I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you. Thank you.